This episode is sponsored by Well. IBD is every day. So shouldn't you have access to the nutrition support you need every day too? The folks over at Well couldn't agree more. Their team of IBD dietitians works with you to develop a care plan that is uniquely tailored to your specific lifestyle and provides the daily support you need in order to expand your diet, reduce your symptoms, and gain a better relationship with food. Head over to RomanWell.com to apply for a complimentary consultation and tell them that Robin and Alicia sent you.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, we talked to Jasmine Boucher. Jasmine was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in college, and so we talked to her about surviving college with ulcerative colitis. We talked to her about traveling abroad to Spain. We talked to her about her secondary diagnosis of blood clot issues and her inflammatory bowel disease. And we talked to her about the difference between cava versus prosecco versus champagne. Cheers.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bowel Moments. I am Robin.
Hey guys, this is Alicia, and we are so excited. Jasmine, do you know that you are our first guest that we're bringing in that we really don't know you? And so this is going to be a wild ride for all of us, because all the rest of the people, at least Robin or I, have known them at least a little bit. So you're like our first mystery guest. How does that feel?
All right. Well, I'm grateful you decided to take a chance on me, I guess. So hopefully you don't regret it at the end.
Well, we can always delete the episode and never speak to you again, really.
That's right.
I'm joking. I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm excited to talk to you already. I won't be mean, I promise, for the rest of the podcast. But,
oh my God, we are off to a great start, everyone. We're off
exactly
to a great start.
2 sips of wine already. Okay, but speaking of wine, Jasmine, are you drinking with us? What are you drinking?
So I have water, but
okay.
I also have prosecco, which I know is maybe controversial, but I like it. So I have a glass of
controversial to who? Not on this show. We love bubbles.
Yes,
Okay.
Bubbles and anything. I mean, listen, sparkling water, prosecco, champagne. I'm with you. The only one I don't love is I'm not a huge fan of cava. However, if you handed me a glass of cava and it was free, I'd still drink it. So, you know, I'm kind of. I kind of am not. I'm a cheap date, basically, is how this goes.
Alicia, what are you drinking tonight?
I busted into my wine cellar and I pulled out a 2017 Zinfandel from California because it felt celebratory this week since I got to see you recently. So I was like, I'm going to drink a nice bottle of wine today.
She's having a fancy Zinfandel. I'm going to disappoint you.
So fancy.
I'm going to disappoint you because I am still working. And by that, I mean, it's after hours. I just got off a work call. This is my break before another work call. So I am having a delicious and delightful fruit smoothie.
Oh,
yes. It has some non-fat plain Greek yogurt. It has vanilla Kate Farms, not sponsored by, but I adore Kate Farms. They make enteral nutrition formulas. And I started drinking Kate Farms after my surgery to help me to get the calories and nutrition that I needed. And so now I have them in fruit smoothies. This has cherries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, and strawberries in it. So I'm wilding out on the fresh fruit tonight.
I was going to say congratulations, because that's a lot of stuff that you weren't eating like a year ago. So
years. I have not been able to have fruit until my surgery, 20 years. So
yay,
JPouch.
Pretty
exciting. Yeah. JPouch.
Speaking of JPouches, not to bury the lead.
I mean, I guess we could talk to our guest and not just keep talking to each other.
Not just provide recipes to smoothies.
I mean, you know.
I am a big smoothie person as well. I'm like, I know I for sure can get in 3 servings of fruit and vegetables if I just puree them and drink them down.
Right.
So
that's right.
I need to get better at this. I think most of my fruit comes in the form of wine. So I probably need to branch out a little bit and try harder. So Jasmine, not about us. It's about you. So tell us your IBD story.
Yeah, so it's a bit convoluted. I was diagnosed during my freshman year of college, and I had never heard of IBD before, had never really heard of autoimmune diseases or chronic illness. So I had a very charmed childhood. So lucky me. And I went to college, was no different than my peers, kind of just excited to be there, nervous about coursework, new roommates, that kind of thing. In the first semester, was fine. It was normal. It was all just the normal college experiences and things. But when I returned to campus for second semester, I started having sort of the symptoms we're all too familiar with now. But back then I didn't know, what to look out for, what that meant. So I was, slowly having increased frequency, urgency when going to the bathroom. Then I slowly started having, blood in the stool and mucus. I was losing a lot of weight, that kind of thing. And because I was at school away from family, the University Health Center was kind of my only option. My GP was 5 hours away at home. So I went to the University Health Center. I was really embarrassed and scared. I didn't want to tell anyone what was going on, but I went there, explained these symptoms I was having, and they said, it's probably due to stress from school or the bad dining hall food, like just give it some time. And I mean, I was losing blood. So I feel like now I'm like, that is horrible, but I was like, they're the doctors, they know best, like I don't know anything. So I kind of just went back to daily life, kept going to class, kept going out with my friends, kept studying, but I just progressively got worse and worse. And I went back to the health center and they prescribed me Imodium, which, is not really going to have that much of an effect when you're going to the bathroom like 20 times a day. So things had gotten really bad by spring. I was going to the bathroom like 20 times just at night, which is awful. In the dorm setting, I had a roommate. I was on the top bunk, so I'd have to jump down from the top bunk, sprint down the hall to the shared bathroom, sit in there, come back 2 minutes later just to do it all again. And it was just so exhausting. And I was actually diagnosed with a blood clot with a DVT before I ever had my IBD diagnosis. So my family had been trying to get me in to see a GI, but the health center wouldn't provide a recommendation. They said I needed to go home to see my GP first. So there was just a lot of bureaucracy and these moving pieces that really prohibited me from getting the care I needed right away. So as I was kind of in this process of trying to figure out when can I go home with my classes and then how can I get this referral to a GI, I started having this leg pain in my right leg behind my knee. And I was having like this sharp stabbing pain, a lot of cramping, some red streaking and swelling. And I mean, I was 19, so I didn't know that screams blood clot. Like now I know that, but I remember like icing my leg, elevating it, thinking maybe I'd somehow hurt it playing sports. I wasn't really exercising because I was so sick, but I was like, at this point, I don't know what it could be. And eventually got so bad that I couldn't really walk to class. So one of my friends told the RA at our dorm, and she was like, you need to go to the hospital immediately. And of course, those things happen at the worst possible time. It was like midnight on a Tuesday. So they bring me to the ER. I'm there for 7 hours total. And that's where they find that I have a blood clot in my leg. And I, am just like so distraught. I'm calling my mom at 3 a.m. I'm like, my whole life is falling apart. Like I'm having all these digestive symptoms and now this, like what's wrong with my body? Because I didn't have that connection yet. So yeah, after that diagnosis, the ER doctor was kind of just like, this is what it is. We don't know why you have this or what's going on. That's not our job. It's not our job to tell you that. Our job is just to diagnose you, give you blood thinning treatment and send you on your way. So thankfully, I guess, because I had that experience, I was able to just get into the GI without going through all these other mechanisms. So I was able to get in a little faster after that, but it was still, a few weeks before I was able to actually go home and see a GI. So I was, limping to class. It would take me like 40 minutes to walk to class between the leg and then sprinting to the bathroom, in between buildings. I knew where every bathroom was in every building on campus. So I could draw you a map, probably no one else could, of Notre Dame. But right around Easter, I went home for Easter and then also had the colonoscopy. And that was when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. I woke up and the GI was just standing over me. He was like, you have ulcerative colitis. It's a form of inflammatory bowel disease. There's no cure, but we have all these treatments that control symptoms and you will live a normal life. So for me, it was a very hopeful moment, I guess. I didn't find it that scary. At that point, I needed an answer. Like I wanted to know what was going on. So I found that reassuring. He handed me the pills right there. I was given Lialda. So he's like, take 4 of these every morning and off you go. Then he just sent me home. That part wasn't so great. He's like, go back to college and finish your first year. But there was still a lot of confusion then with what was going on with my blood clot and the blood issues. During the colonoscopy, they, of course, took like some blood work and just ran some labs and they found that my platelet count was really, really low. And I didn't really know what platelets did back then, but platelets are responsible for clotting. So, I mean, it's kind of weird to have a blood clot and then also have low platelets, but normal platelet counts are between 150,000 and 400,000, and mine was down to like 30,000. So they were like, you're at, a high risk of uncontrollable internal bleeding. Like if you were to bump your head, if you were, to bump your arm and get a bruise and might create some bleeding that couldn't be stopped. So, I have this sort of hopeful moment where I'm like, things are turning around. And then at the same time, it's like, no, you're getting knocked back down. So I went to see a hematologist in that same sort of trip of appointments. No one was really willing to make a connection between the blood clot and the IBD or the low platelets. So there was just a lot of uncertainty. So I was on blood thinners, which were injections I was getting in my abdomen every morning and night because they thought it was too dangerous for me to be on sort of an oral blood thinning medication because of how low my platelets were, because we had these sort of two things in tension with each other. And they were just kind of like, let's get your IBD under control and hope your platelet counts just rise because you're healthy again. And that was how they sent me back for like the last 3 weeks of school for exam weeks and sort of the last hurrah where everyone else is like, classes are over. We got some time in between exams. We're all going out having fun. And I was like, I don't even know what's going on. So I was going to the health center every morning and night to get these shots. The doctors had told me like not to use a razor in the shower because I might, nick myself and cause bleeding issues. I was told not to even wear jeans with like a button waistband. They told me to wear only soft waistbands because it might cause bruising. So it was very scary. I was like, I'm going to accidentally kill myself. But as time went on, the IBD slowly improved. The medication did help. They ended up putting me on prednisone as well for the platelets, actually, because I guess it can help increase platelet counts. It didn't raise my platelet counts, but it might have helped my IBD now that I know that's also used for IBD. And yeah, that summer was kind of like the summer where me and my mom sat down and we kind of reevaluated. Once I was home, once classes were over, we're like, we need to change doctors because they don't really seem to know how to handle all these moving pieces and these different issues. And I had won a grant to study in Spain that summer, and the doctors, told me I wasn't allowed to go. So I was very upset that I was stuck at home, like trying to manage the medical system instead of, partying up in Spain. But we moved all my treatment 2 hours south to a teaching hospital. And that was one of the best decisions I feel like we made. I got there, the hematologist took I think 27 vials of blood. It was the most blood I'd ever seen in my life. But she was really just like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to figure it out. We know you're not happy on these abdominal injections. We're going to move you to a pill, even though it's riskier. Like, I'm listening to you. I hear you don't like this. So sort of, we're going to change, put you in charge of your care. So that was really the first time I felt like the doctors were taking me seriously. But after she did all those tests, she came back and said, you have ITP, which I wish I could pronounce. I don't know if either of you were able to look into it.
I wrote it down. It's immune thrombocytopenia purposa.
Yes, something like that. I always just say ITP, but another diagnosis, I think, as you guys know, autoimmune diseases come in twos. So basically my immune system was attacking and destroying healthy platelets, just like with UC, it's attacking and destroying healthy cells in the colon. So once, the immune system is out of whack, it kind of just will go where it will. But it was good to have the diagnosis and just kind of know, going forward, there's really nothing you can do for this. You kind of just live with it. So once we got my platelets, once my IBD was stable, my platelets went up to 60,000, which, is still very low, but that's considered a safe low. I think you can have surgery if you need to. So we kind of just left it at that. And then, I went into remission for 2 years for my sophomore and junior years of college. But then unfortunately, my IBD medicine stopped working right before my senior year of college, and I was very sick. So I was on the Lialda still. I had been in remission, done all these great things, finally gone to Spain, studied abroad in Washington, D.C. But my medication stopped working that summer, and I was really sick really fast. I lost 15 to 20 pounds pretty quickly before I even had any digestive symptoms. So I was already in this deficit when the digestive symptoms started. So that summer before school, they decided to bump me up to infusion medication. So I started with Entyvio, and I did that all fall of my senior year, but I would get better for 1 week and then just progressively get worse until the next infusion. So we reevaluated around Christmas, did some labs. They decided this wasn't working, switched me to Remicade. I ended up being hospitalized that February for 4 days because the Remicade wasn't really working. So they wanted to give me IV prednisone. So that was my first hospitalization. That was at school. My parents like drove down to be with me, so I didn't have to be alone. They upped my Remicade dose to the highest dose at the shortest frequency. So instead of every 8 weeks, I was getting it every 4. That wasn't helping. So I went home for spring break and they're like, we're going to hospitalize you at home where your team is. So I was actually in the hospital in March, the week COVID hit, the week COVID shut down the world, which was crazy. When I got there, the hospital was super busy. All the rooms were full. Everything was normal. When I left, it was like no visitors, no one around. The doctors wouldn't even really come in the room. They would come and like stand up against the door as far away from me as possible, just because everyone was so scared because no one knew what was going on. So that was really strange. But that was kind of like the last ditch effort to save the colon. They gave me an extra Remicade dose there and more prednisone. And when I went home, I just would get sicker and sicker. It would help me a little bit when I was there, but the minute I'd leave, it was just like worse than it had been. So then I stayed at home because school had moved online because of COVID. And my doctors were like, you are absolutely not going back to school. We don't know what this is. It could kill you. You're staying home. All my friends are still at school. So I was doing school remotely, which ended up being kind of a godsend for me because I was way too sick to walk to class. I just kept getting sicker and sicker. We were kind of waiting for the Remicade to kick in, and it just became clear it wasn't. And that May, I had a call with them and they were like, you can try Stelara, your last option. We're 99% sure it won't work. Like you'll probably be forced into emergency surgery during the onboarding phase, or you can have surgery now. And I was like, well, if I'm gonna have to have it either way, like let's do it sooner so I can feel better sooner. So I met with a surgeon. Like a week later, I was getting the little purple dot for the ostomy drawn on my stomach. And then like 3 days after that, I had surgery. That was a day after my college graduation. So yeah, like you said, it really is contained in those 4 years. Yeah, I was in the hospital, I think 10 days with that surgery. It was pretty long, but I was really sick. I think because I was so underweight, that made it really difficult. But after the surgery, I, thankfully was able to go home. I was on TPN for 2 months, getting the IV feeding too, but slowly got better. And then I decided to do the 2 additional surgeries to get the JPouch. And those were a lot easier for me. I know a lot of people say the second one is the hardest, but I think because I was so sick going into the first one and so much healthier and stronger going into the second, I found it a lot less painful. And I've now had a JPouch for about almost 1.5 years. So pretty crazy how time flies. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that right now, but because I felt like I was trying to get to that point for so long, because it took me about 10 months between my first surgery and then the final JPouch. And then you're adjusting to it for months. I mean, I'm still kind of adjusting to it, but doing pretty well.
Yeah, only 1.5 years in post your last surgery, your takedown, I would say you're still adjusting.
Yeah. It definitely has its times. It'll surprise me. Like a few nights ago. I mean, I don't really have accidents, but a few nights ago, I was like, oh, you just got to test me with this.
Yeah. Yes.
That is a really wild ride in a really short amount of time. And especially when you're trying to do all of that, just living in college and getting to know college and studying abroad and doing all these things. Like that's a lot. That's a heck of a lot. I want to go, gosh, I have so many questions for you now.
Me too. I'm like, so many questions. Right. I'm just going to say one thing. I'm not going to ask a question. I just want to say thank you for going into so much detail, because you do have parts of your story, diagnoses that we haven't had on the show.
Yes.
And the blood clot, I don't know that I've met any in my 20 years of living with IBD. I don't know that I've met anyone else that has that, like with the platelets and the blood clot. So, I mean, I feel like I've met almost every kind of co-diagnosis. I mean, I always say IBD misery loves company, because there are those like joint diagnoses, right? Or the extraintestinal manifestations. But I honestly don't think that I've ever met anybody that's had the same experience as you in that sense. So, okay, you can go first, Alicia.
No, I mean, that is one of the first questions, is talk to us a little bit more of like, did they ever connect those two together for you when you started seeing specialists?
Yeah, so they essentially said, yes, IBD can cause blood clots, and it's usually a combination of genetic factors and the like misregulation of the immune system. But they tested me for the genetic factors and I didn't have them, so I'm just special. But I guess it even seems like now, like 5 years later, because this was 2017, it seems like there's more in the literature about how IBD can increase your chance of blood clots like 3 to 4 times just the average person without IBD, which is pretty high. But the hematologist said, you know, if blood is escaping into your digestive system, then those toxins in your digestive system can probably get into your bloodstream, and that might cause issues with the way your body's clotting mechanisms work. I don't know all the details, but that's kind of how they explain it to me. So that one for sure, they said there is a connection. The ITP is still pretty unclear. When I started seeing the specialist, the GI said he had other patients who had the same sort of presentation where they, you know, never had platelet issues until the IBD, but no one seems to know more than that there can be this correlation sometimes. That's pretty uncommon, but not super uncommon. Like there are other people out there like me, and he'd seen them. So that's as much as I have on that. But
well, I mean, you're in law school, not medical school, so we don't expect you to like know every single thing about all of these other diagnoses. I mean, yes, please give me a medical lesson right now, Jasmine.
I wish I could and understand myself better.
Did you have any issues when you were a kid? Like, do your parents remember you like getting a bruise that never healed? Or was, you know, like when you knew about it, did you find stuff going back?
I wish I could say so, but no, I was very healthy as a kid. No one in my family has IBD. No one has clotting issues. I'm just the lucky one. But when I was sick, they put me on the blood thinners when I was flaring, and then they took me off when I was in remission, and I did fine. Like I didn't have any issues. So then when I started flaring again, they put me back on the blood thinners preemptively. So that worked for me. But I think maybe some of this surgical aspects might influence this for other IBD patients. Just, you know, like you talk with COVID, like laying in the hospital bed for so long.
That is super fascinating because I, again, not a doctor, make this clear, but I would assume it would be the opposite, because if you're flaring and you're bleeding and you're on blood thinners, presumably you would bleed more because it's blood thinners.
That's the problem, which that would happen. I would have to be off the blood thinner before a colonoscopy for, you know, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it was. And that's sort of a risk analysis you do, and you stop it. And the only time I would stop bleeding that entire year I was flaring was when I was off the blood thinners. So they haven't quite figured out how to balance those two, but I think, you know, you look at both and the risk of getting another blood clot is worse, because once you've had 2 blood clots, they told me you have to be on blood thinners for life. That's just how it works. So you don't want a second one.
No. Well, and I'm curious because I know some of the medications also come with a higher risk of blood clots. So I'm curious, how do you weigh out, like when they were working with you to try to figure out what treatment to do, how did they factor that in? Did they talk to you about it? Did they just say, this is our best guess on what we think is right for you? And you just said, cool, I feel awful, give it to me?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I was like, anything you can do to make me better. But they kind of started with Entyvio, Remicade, and I was like, okay, Entyvio is gut specific. I have a gut disease. That makes sense to me. So I went with that one. That didn't work. And then I was like, well, now we need this strong one because it shuts down everything. But at the end, when they were like, Stelara is your last option, for me, Xeljanz was always off the table, since Xeljanz has that black box warning for blood clots. So that wouldn't have been an option for me. So
no, you know, I'm fascinated immediately because Entyvio is typically not covered before Remicade for a lot of people. And so I'm like, good job, insurance company. So cheers to your insurance company, because I've railed against them in the last episode. So
cheers to my mom for fighting them on it. Really, she is.
Cheers to your mom.
Cheers to your mom.
Also, cheers to your mom for sitting down with you after your freshman year of college and saying, okay, we need to revisit your care.
Yes.
And like have a conversation with you about that. Yeah. I mean, that's valuable life lessons that you're going to take with you for any time you have any kind of treatment. I mean, go mom.
Yeah, I was very lucky in that regard. I never had to navigate the healthcare system. And all of a sudden it's like, no one will talk to my parents because I'm 19. So
that's right. Yes. Yeah. I had the same thing with my daughters because they're 25 and 23. They're like, Mom, talk to my doctor. I'm like, I can't, honey, you can't. You're an adult.
That's scary. That's scary for both of you though, because I know like you're also not feeling well. So you're like, please just talk to somebody other than me, because I don't want to make this decision. I just want to like get better and just get me that first. Can I ask you about Spain? Because one of our past guests, he was actually diagnosed, he got sick in France when he was studying in Paris. And so I'm curious if you had to navigate the Spanish healthcare system at all when you were there.
Thankfully, no. I was worried about that, but I had a colonoscopy right before I left. So this was about a year after all the craziness freshman year. And I remember I woke up and the doctor was like, if you showed me just like a picture of your intestine and asked me if this person has IBD or not, I would say absolutely not. Like, that's how healthy your tissue looks. And so to me, I was like, this was all a fluke. Like, no one in my family has this. I just have to take these pills every morning. I'll be fine for the rest of my life. But joke's on me, but thankfully I was healthy that summer. I was there for, I think, 7 weeks. And thankfully I didn't have to go to the hospital for any reason, but I did some insurance things and made sure I was all covered when I was there in case. But yeah, got like a mail order of extra pills in case there was some reason I couldn't get home on time, just, do all those sort of backup things.
Very smart. Did you do any research on like hospitals, doctors, anything like that, so that if something would happen, you were already prepared for them?
I think I researched the hospitals in the town I was in. I was in a smaller town, but I didn't go in, to specifics of the actual doctors. I think because I had such good news from the GI and he kind of signed some sheets for me that I brought with me that said like, this person has ulcerative colitis and history of blood clots. So at least I had like a medical document. If I were to go somewhere, they could take that and I wouldn't have to try to translate because I did not learn those words in Spanish in class. But
that wasn't immediately on your curriculum. I'm so disappointed.
I know. I mean, I can barely pronounce it in English. So I just brought those with me. I had like a medical emergency card. I think I had a medical alert bracelet I wore that had my information on it. So just kind of cover as many bases as I could. And then, at some point you have to live your life. So,
well, and I mean, believe me, I vaguely remember being in my 20s and I remember being very unconcerned by a lot of things in my life and just like, it'll be fine. So of course I can travel to this foreign country and not have any reservations for any hotels or anything like that. Why not? Oh, no. Do I speak this language? No, you're still
here. Everything turned out just fine. So when I got to talk to you a little bit before we actually decided to move forward with this episode, because, hey, as Alicia said, we didn't know you. So we're just not going to bring strangers on our show that neither one of us has even talked to. You had your surgery. What did you say, the day after you graduated from Notre Dame?
Yeah, it was kind of a nightmare. My graduation was remote, so it wasn't really a graduation. Right. And I just remember I had to do bowel prep. I was like, really? I'm going to the bathroom constantly. Am I not empty already? But I had to fast and do bowel prep the 24 hours before. So I'm like sitting in my living room, miserable, worst day of my life. I did not want to have this surgery. To me, this was worst case scenario, not really my plan when I'm 22. Sitting in my living room, watching all the names scroll on the TV of this virtual graduation, like drinking this bowel prep, running to the bathroom. And yeah, that's my memory of my college graduation. And all my friends were at school and I remember they all texted me like, congratulations, because my name went across the screen and I was in the bathroom. I just remember crying on the toilet, like, of course, this is how this year would end. It wouldn't end any other way, would it?
Oh, boo. That sucks. That sucks really hard. Maybe we can recreate it for you. We'll do a video of you when you're cap and gown walking and put it on our Instagram page.
No, it wasn't what I imagined. I feel grateful to have graduated on time just because of how sick I was. I couldn't walk to class or really even study at that point. I was just so tired and sick. So the fact that I could just do it all remotely was a blessing in disguise for my personal situation. My life didn't really change when the world shut down. I was just, laying in bed anyway. So.
Well, I guess that's a positive way to see the glass half full on that one. I am curious though, because since really when you had your ostomy, you were still quarantined and kind of away from people. What was it? I mean, obviously there was some information going into you getting an ostomy, but what was that like living with an ostomy? Because it was very unexpected for you.
First, I was really displeased with it. I was just like, this is not what I wanted. Why me? Why this? Why now? I was trying to reconcile this vision I'd had of my life with this new life I was having. And I personally thought they couldn't align. So it took a lot of time for me. I really needed the time to get healthy again. Like I was on TPN for 2 months. So I was, still pretty sick and in a lot of pain after the surgery. I remember I couldn't even walk to the end of my driveway. I'd do these daily walks where I'd try to walk to the end of the driveway, but I was in so much abdominal pain in your core. You don't even realize you use it for everything. So it was just slowly that sort of time, like being able to walk around the block, being able to eat all these foods I hadn't been able to eat for a year. Like I had been living on boiled chicken for months, for almost a year. I wasn't eating anything. I was doing all these diets to cure my condition. So it was just sort of having that life slowly come back. And then I was able to sort of think about the ostomy in a different way and be like, it's allowed me to do all these things that I couldn't do and I wouldn't have been able to do. But I had a hard time at the start. I think some people wake up and they're like, this saved my life and I would have died otherwise. And I'm just so happy. But for me, it was a little harder. I feel like my age, might have played into that. But ultimately, you're able to pretty much do everything you could do without an ostomy with an ostomy. So I think that really helped me see it in a more positive light.
This episode is sponsored by Roman Well. Have you ever felt overwhelmed and unsure about what questions you should ask your doctor or if you should get a referral to a dietitian? If so, you are not alone. The dietitians over at Roman Well help patients every day navigate these questions and many more. They've just released an amazing free resource for patients called the IBD Patient Starter Kit that is jam-packed with tips and tools to empower you to become your own best advocate. Check out the show notes or head on over to romanwell.com to download a copy of the IBD Patient Starter Kit today. I love how polite you were when you said, I was displeased.
I was really mad.
I mean, you're like, you're not going to offend us or the ostomy. I mean, I feel like your ileum is stuffed back inside now, so it can't hear you. I'm sorry. I just like so many people get like really upset on the show. They're like, use much more violently descriptive words, and you were just displeased. It's just so polite.
Yeah. I mean, my boyfriend had been like, you need to do this. Like, you need to do this now. You're not okay. And I was like, I will not do that. I will go to my grave before I do that. And I think it's really hard because as much as you read online, like you really can't prepare for that. Like no human experience prepares you for that. There's no connections you can pull on or like nothing that's happened to you. You really just have to wake up and do it. And so I think, no matter how many people told me like, talk to this girl, like she has a great life and she's 25, or my doctors were like telling me all these stories about people doing well with them. And I was just like, no. But I was coming off a year of just complete and total exhaustion, and everything they had promised me before that would work hadn't worked. So I was like, why is this going to work? Why will this be any different? Like, prove me wrong, which they did, but it was a hard thing to come to terms with, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and unfortunately, the proving you wrong took time. It's not like you woke up and were immediately like, holy cow, this is the best thing I've ever done. You're like, this is kind of bullshit. And I still have a long way to go. And TPN isn't fun. I don't think anybody that's been on it, like, even though it makes you feel better, it's not fun. You can't eat. It's, it's another sort of stigmatizing thing that's attached to you. And so, again, it's not like you just woke up and were like, had a cheeseburger and everything was fantastic. It's hard. And I can understand because you also look at other people and go, well, that's her life. That's not mine. My situation is different. So it's easy to say that's somebody else. That's not me, and kind of excuse it.
Yeah.
So now you lived with the ostomy for a while. At some point, did you have to make the decision like, okay, I'm going to go from here. I'm going to lose the ostomy and I move to the JPouch. What was that decision like when you decided to kind of take that next step?
I decided before I even had surgery, I was like, the only way I will have the surgery is if I can have the JPouch, right? Which I guess is a little limiting, but I was just really, I feel like my life felt so out of control and I wanted some control over what was going on. And of course, you go into this surgery and they're like, there's no way we can guarantee you won't have a permanent ostomy. So that's a risk you have to take. But I felt like, my doctors told me I was a good candidate. It had kind of always been presented to me as like the end goal is the JPouch. Not because the ostomy, you will have a bad quality of life, but just because this is the closest we can get you to sort of a normal life within these confines we're working in. And that was something I wanted. I mean, I'd only had IBD for 4 years at that point, and 2 of them I was, in deep remission. Not really, like, I didn't really think about my IBD. I went to the bathroom once a day. It didn't really affect my life. So really, it had been that year. So it was kind of like, I want to try this. I'm 22. I hopefully have a lot of life ahead of me. And I kind of felt like I was in a niche spot with being right in between college graduation and the start of law school. It was pretty easy to just defer law school, which was disappointing, but a lot of people were making different decisions with COVID that year, I think. So it wasn't necessarily out of the norm. And then also having COVID on top of that, not really being able to do anything or go anywhere. I was like, I just want to do all these things, get better, and put it behind me. Instead of like, just, I feel like it would have felt very open-ended if I just had the temporary ostomy and it was like, this is going to happen sometime, but we don't know when. I wanted to just kind of start this long JPouch recovery process before I ever went to school. And if I did it all in this year, that would give me, 6 months before I started law school to kind of get my feel for it. So I'm not running out of classes to the bathroom again and just sort of living that same cycle.
And law school is pretty unforgiving. So it's probably good that you you got that done ahead of time. So 2 things, and you can go whichever direction you want at this point. I'm curious about going to law school. Did your disease affect the type of law that you want to practice? Did it affect your choices going forward at all? And then the second thing I want to ask you is about your social media, because you openly identify as having a JPouch on your social media. And this has become sort of, I think, part of what you're putting out there to the world. So I'm curious how you made that choice, because it does sound like, this was hard won. So is this a celebratory thing, or tell me why you did that, basically. So go in either direction or talk about neither of them. Doesn't matter.
So in answer to your first question, yes, I always thought I wanted to do international law, and I'm still very interested in that. But I do want to be a healthcare attorney now, because I think I've seen a lot of issues, whether that's just the way the healthcare system interacts with the institutions like universities, all the insurance issues, being 19 and doing all of this. I think there's a lot of space for me as an attorney with patient experience to interact with the healthcare system and hopefully make positive change. So that's kind of the trajectory I'm on now in terms of my classes, my clinics, my moot court teams are all sort of the health law ones. So, and at first I was like, maybe I need, a barrier between, my personal life and this work life. Will it be too much if it's in both? But I think I feel more passionate about what I'm reading and what I'm doing when I have with this personal connection.
They don't have to necessarily be apart, because you could also be affecting international health care and international sort of things as it relates to that. Probably a little bit harder, but I do love that you're going into healthcare law, because we need you. Frankly, we need you.
Yes, we do. Desperately.
Yeah, I think in any role that interacts with the healthcare system, we need people with patient experience, because it just changes the way you interact with other people and interact with what you're doing. Yeah. So in regards to the social media, I felt like when I was going through the JPouch surgery, I don't know if you felt like this, Robin, but there was just a lot of negativity online. And I remember what a nurse said to me about the ostomy that really stuck with me. She said, like, online, you'll see the horror stories and the best of the best stories. And, most people are somewhere in between, and that's probably where you'll end up. And I feel like that was kind of what I was looking for, was just someone, I ate, my favorite meal, and I went out and did this, and I, maybe had a little bit of an accident, but I made it to the bathroom one time. Like, I just wanted sort of this authentic look, like candid look into JPouch life, instead of it being like this bad thing happened to me, or this is the best thing that happened to me, and that's all you see. And the Facebook group, I feel like, is a lot of the lowest of the lows and the highest of the highs. And I really wanted to put out just sort of like life with a JPouch for other people coming after me. And I think also being young, it's kind of selfish in a way, but I wanted to connect with other people who'd been through it, because I didn't know anyone with IBD, with an ostomy, with a JPouch, with any of that. And I think it can be very isolating at any age, but especially, at least for me in college, being in that environment where every day I'm seeing everyone around me who looks like me, who is my age, but who isn't going through any of the things I'm going through. It felt like almost a slap in the face sometimes. It's like watching people go out to the bars till 2 a.m. and drink 10 shots and then have pizza. And it's like, I'm doing everything I can, like doing all these nasty herbal supplements and, homework in the infusion centers, and I'm still not healthy. So it was pretty isolating at times. So I think for me, I also just wanted to try to draw people to me that had similar experiences, that I could, ask questions of myself, or just kind of have that solidarity.
I mean, when I was younger and I was first diagnosed, I was 25. So it was a lot different experience than the surgery that I had at 46, and a lot different experience for the reason behind the surgery too. So I will say when I was 25, yes, I did not know anybody else who was going through that. And I did feel very isolated. I just had my family and maybe a friend or two who I shared it with right at the beginning. So I can definitely relate to those thoughts.
I'm curious though, because
Yeah.
you alluded to this, Jasmine, about how what you had to relearn or what you learned in the process of healing with your JPouch. And I know, Robin, you've talked about this as well as like the things you've kind of had to figure out again as you're learning to live with the JPouch. So what were the biggest takeaways from that, or what were the biggest aha kind of moments after kind of learning to live with this?
I think it requires a lot of mental fortitude. I think it's really easy to be like, why is my body not healing as fast as I want it to? Like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. I'm eating thickening foods and I'm eating dinner at 5 p.m. and I'm doing all these things, but I'm still having leakage or like having accidents or having urgency or pressure. And I think that's really challenging, but it just takes time. Like, I think honestly, it is trial and error. Like, you have to try things, see if it sits well with your body. If it doesn't, don't do it. Try it again later. For me, I do a lot better with smaller meals. I snack constantly throughout the day. So when I eat a really big meal, I feel like my stomach, it just doesn't handle it that well. There's not as much intestine for it to go in. The JPouch is smaller. So I always just feel really uncomfortable. So that's something that I've learned through trial and error is like these big meals don't work well for me. I'm still struggling with the fact that I love to eat snacks late at night, and that is not good for going to the bathroom at night. But I just do it anyways. So that's probably not good advice. But, after law school is over, like I like to just have my snack not while I'm studying, and that's usually later at night. So, sometimes you pick and choose, but it really does get better with time. I think it's just a lot of time. Like, I was seeing improvements 6 months, 8 months, a year out. I could point to things where it's like I couldn't ever get past a mile with my ostomy. Like, I was still just very weak, but it took like 8 months, but I was finally able to run like 3 miles, and that was a big deal. But it's just like it just takes a lot of time. Your body has been through so much, and it's just an entirely new digestive system, and you don't remember as a baby learning how to use it. So now you get all it in all its glory.
It's funny that you said baby and learn how to use it again. Before I had my surgery in 2020, I told Leisha, this is the third time I've had to potty train in my life. Once as a baby, once when I had my colon removed when I was 25, and now at 46, I'm having to potty train all over again. It's really something to look forward to. I was really excited about it. But so you're a year and a half out takedown, and I'm 11 months out from my takedown.
That's exciting.
So
Almost
I'm like waiting for you to tell me something that's happened to you in the past couple of months that I'm like, oh, I have this to look forward to in the next 6 months.
My main problem has been leakage. I know some people don't have that issue, but I noticed it has gotten a lot better around like 14, 15 months out. So I mean, that's huge for me because I still wear like a thin panty liner like every day, which is, in the grand scheme of everything I've been through, it's not that big of a deal, but it is still kind of annoying. I'm like, I wish I didn't have to do this. So that's exciting when I like make it through X amount of days. I'm like, nothing has leaked out. Like, hopefully we're on the right path. But then of course it'll be like one day it happens and I'm just like, at least I don't know if you struggle with that. I know some people don't, which I envy them, but for me, that's been sort of the biggest change I've noticed. And just nighttime, I'm able to sleep through the night more often without, taking a tons of Imodium and things.
I do celebrate that. Like when Alicia and I were just together, both nights I slept through the night without.
It was huge.
Yeah.
She's good luck.
You're taking credit.
Me. It's me.
You're taking credit for it. Yeah, that was huge. 2 nights in a row, sleeping through the night was huge. That was a big accomplishment.
As the person who's sharing a bathroom with you, I appreciate that as well. So thanks, JPouch. Because the nice thing about that is I got to sleep through the night too, because Jasmine, unfortunately, this is how you age, is you just like stop sleeping. So,
don't tell me that.
So you got a long way to go. Right. Don't worry. Like this is 40s talk over here.
Right. You have many years of sleeping, like
blissful nights where you sleep all the way through and you fall asleep right away and the world is not on your shoulders. It's glorious.
Yes.
I want to sleep like a 20-year-old so bad. It'd be so amazing.
Oh no.
Well, I better enjoy it then while it lasts.
That's right.
Yes, you better.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I do appreciate it a lot more because when I was really sick senior year, I was almost only going to the bathroom from like 4 p.m. till 8 a.m. So I just wouldn't I didn't sleep for like an entire year. So my favorite thing now is like I can wake up, like I'd have to wake up and immediately run to the bathroom. So I can like wake up and just lay in the sheets and just slowly wake up. It's like my favorite part of the day.
Lovely.
All right. Well, so you've got a little hint of it then, perhaps. It's not that bad when you get older. I shouldn't claim that. It's not that bad.
What's next?
You know, we hit a lot of what I wanted to talk about, except for I am genuinely curious if you're still with the boyfriend.
Yes,
Well done.
yes, he was really the only, I mean, my family, my mom, my family, but at school, my friends were not really supportive at all. Like I don't really have any super close friends from college just because I guess, I don't know, with my friend group, it was like senior year mentality. We're going out to the bars every night. We got to make the most of senior year. And I was sick and I couldn't go. So I just feel like I was kind of out of sight, out of mind, which was really hard. But thankfully, he was the one person there for me and, was driving me to class and making me dinners and doing all those things. And it was hard with like the surgeries because I had to be very careful with COVID. So I couldn't always see him, even though the risk was low. It's like, do we want to risk these surgeries being postponed? And then possibly like, what do you do with law school? But yeah, I've been very lucky in that regard. I know people have not always had great experiences with their partners and getting the ostomy bag, but I think it's definitely a good sign where he just wanted what was clearly best for me, even when I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really sweet that he's like, girl, you need to do this. Like, stop doing this.
I know.
Well, and I think it's interesting because, my nephew graduated from high school and he ended up deferring college as well. And I think for him, it made sense, like, because there are just some people that experience of trying to do school online, and especially in law school where you're making a lot of connections that you're going to use as you go forward as a professional as well. You're not just learning, you're networking. And so I think that's so much harder online. And so I think it's almost like it was a little bit of a blessing that everybody was deferring. And so it wasn't abnormal for people to do that. And so, I mean, people weren't necessarily going to question you on that one. It's like everybody kind of did it. So,
oh yeah, whenever I tell people I deferred, they just assume it was because of COVID, and I never know. Should I correct them? Should I be like, oh, I almost died, but no, also COVID.
I mean,
so I just let it slide, but that's mostly what people assume.
It depends on whether you want them to be amazed by you or not. Like you could just be like, oh yeah, I just sort of almost died, and then now I'm here. Look at me, yay!
So.
I throw it into casual conversation.
Exactly. I would definitely use this. I'd be like, yeah, look at how amazing I'm doing. Thank you.
Alicia and I were talking to someone the other day, not for the podcast, and we're like, oh yeah, we've had a crazy couple of years. Alicia's like, I did this and I did that, and I said, and we both like, and I almost died, and then we just kept on moving on from just part of the conversation, and they're like, okay, let's hold on, rewind. You almost died. What happened? I'm like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. I'm fine now.
It is a big deal though.
We were pretty blasé about it though. We were like, oh yeah, don't you know that? Oh, everybody knows that.
Everybody knows it.
Listen to her podcast.
You haven't almost died too? I can't believe it.
Yeah. They kept asking us for a fun fact the first day, and I was like, when should I say I don't have a large intestine?
Immediately. That should be the first, because people, okay, my husband actually told a coworker, I was fundraising, doing a race and fundraising, and I have a very supportive partner, and he was asking his coworkers, to make donations and that kind of stuff. And he told someone that I didn't have a large intestine, and they were like, is she sure? Because you can't live with that. And my husband's like, she's pretty sure that she doesn't have a large intestine.
Is she sure? What?
Is she sure? Yes. I just made it up for effect. They're like, you really can't live without a large intestine. He's like, pretty sure that you can. Pretty sure that you can, because I happen to be married somebody who's been living for 20 years without a large intestine. So pretty sure that you can live without one. So I vote always lead. If that's the fun fact and no one knows that about you, that's number one.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get some off-color responses like that.
Yeah.
Could be entertaining.
It is very entertaining. It's very entertaining. Jasmine, we have been talking to you a lot, and you have been so open with us. I appreciate that so much. But it's time for the last question, because we've kept you on here for an hour now.
And she probably has homework.
Probably
It's summer,
so.
school's out.
What is the one thing that you want the IBD community to take away from your experience? Like, what is the one thing that you want everyone in our community to know?
I had this quote that I sent you, which was, no one can teach you anything about healing you aren't going to discover for yourself. And I think I kind of touched on that with the ostomy, like no matter how much you read or how many people you talk to, you're never really prepared for it. But I think there's a lot of media out there trying to give us advice about how to live with our conditions or how to quote unquote cure our conditions. And then like when I got my ostomy, there was a lot of positive information about the ostomy, a lot of negative information about the JPouch. And I just really think, at least for me, I got more out of people just telling me what they've been through and having sort of that solidarity, feeling like I wasn't alone in this, these experiences, this journey, there's more coming, instead of telling people how they should be living with IBD. This is how it's going to be with the JPouch. This is how you should be eating with it. This is how you should be changing your ostomy bag, that kind of thing. So I really think it's kind of up to you IBD is so individualized. So you're going to find out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what your IBD is like as you live through it. And I don't know, maybe that sounds scary, but I think I take solace in that, knowing that like relying on my own personal experiences and then kind of sharing my experience with others to hopefully help them without sort of, imposing those experiences on them. So yeah, I guess that would be sort of the one thing to take away is like, I'm trying to share these experiences just so they're out there so other people can reference them. No, they're not alone. No, other people are going through these same things, have people they can connect with and reach out to, but at the same time, not have that pressure to sort of do things in a certain way. Or if they don't do this, they're not going to be healthy or they won't have a good experience with the JPouch, that kind of thing.
I think that's really good advice. And Robin, it sounds, like you and I were just talking about this the other day, like we don't know any people that have the same IBD. Like everybody that we know, all of their IBD is slightly different. So even though somebody's experience was absolutely drop dead amazing with their JPouch surgery, it doesn't mean that your surgery, if it doesn't go exactly that way, is bad or wrong, or that you did something, which I think was really important. I guess I'm sort of I'm thinking back to like our conversation with Nicole, where she's like, people can feel like they did something wrong and blame themselves when it doesn't look exactly like that other person's shiny Instagram account of their JPouch journey. And, and that's okay. Yours can look different. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. So I think that's important to share your perspective because it's going to be valuable for other people as well. So that's good. I'm curious if you have specific advice for people diagnosed in college though. Is there any like young people with IBD advice you have?
That's a good question. I think reaching out to the often limited university resources could be helpful because I didn't. So I think I, just chose to struggle through trying to make it to class and like dealing with the dining hall food, and there could have been better accommodations. I think also there are Crohn's and Colitis Foundation groups for people in college. That could be a good way to connect with other people your age, but just in general, it is really hard to balance. And I think I also like this quote, focus on the step in front of you, not the entire staircase. So I think it can really help to break it down, day by day, class by class, meal by meal, kind of just figure out what works for you. Like for me, I would sit in the back on the end of every row, in the lecture hall so I could get to the bathroom. So kind of just trying to get through it piece by piece instead of thinking about, I've got 4 years here. I don't know if I'll be healthy this whole time. Like, I just don't think that's super productive, like worrying about all these things that could happen but haven't happened. So kind of just breaking it down into these more manageable bites while you're in that environment, I think is helpful. Won't solve everything, but can make it feel a little bit more manageable.
I want to emphasize that a little bit too, because you said you just powered through without getting accommodation. So if you are in college, please reach out to your universities. I don't know if it's a disability department or what it is, but get accommodations. Please get accommodations.
Yeah, it would probably be the Office of Disability Services or Office of Student Services. And if you go through the health center, they can oftentimes connect you with those people. So even though the health center may not be terribly helpful, they can potentially get you at least to that right person. It is a disability for some folks, even if it's not actually, like, even if you're perfectly healthy, like you were in remission for 2 years, still having them know that you have that in case something goes a little bit wrong and you need some time off, or you need some extra time for tests, or you need to be able to walk out of the room to take a test, which sometimes doesn't always happen. They can help you with those accommodations.
Yeah, actually going off of that, I think getting it set up while you're healthy would be ideal, because freshman year I powered through it. Then I was healthy, so I didn't need it. And then senior year, when everything is falling apart, I don't have it, and I tried to get it and they actually denied my accommodation request, which is a whole nother story because this was in February. So about 3 weeks later, COVID hits and everyone's remote, getting these accommodations that are far greater than what I asked for. But I digress. I think doing it when you're healthy and having those systems in place for when you do need them is better than when you're already dealing with all these other, insurance and healthcare issues and then throwing that on top of it.
Yeah. And you may never need them and it's not a big deal, but at least they're there. And like you said, and I know you didn't want to deal with it. You just wanted to be you and go to school and feel normal for a little while. But having it there is, I think, good in a lot of ways. But you figured it out, which is great. And Jasmine, I think it was such a joy to talk to you. This was so much fun to talk to somebody we didn't know and hear like a story we didn't know a little snippet of. I just have so enjoyed this. And now I want to know more about your life. And so I hope you come back and do Instagram Live with us someday so we can hear more.
Yes, I'd love to come back. I've enjoyed talking to you too. And I hope you take a risk on another stranger sometime.
No, never again.
No,
stranger
the
danger.
Token one.
Stranger danger.
I mean, they have IBD, so you've already got that connection.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
No, this is such a fabulous community. I mean, I don't have IBD and I'm still hanging out with y'all. So I mean, I'm here for a reason. So no, we will definitely bring in more people. Robin and I don't know everybody, despite my joke that we know everybody with JPouches. We don't know everybody. And so I think.
Well, send them my way. I know no one.
Oh, yes. Your handle. How can people find you? How can people find you?
Oh, it's jpouch.jasmine.
Gorgeous. And we'll link to it in the show notes as well if people are interested in finding you.
I know I'm not the biggest Instagram fan, but it has been a good way to connect with other people. So I think it's the best option right now that I have.
Jasmine, again, thank you so very much for coming and spending your time with us. And so we're going to end this by saying thanks everybody for joining us for Bowel Moments, and cheers.
Cheers. Hey guys, this is Jasmine. If you like this episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend.